Great. All right. My name's James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Cannabis Control Board here in Vermont. Today is August 30th. It's 1:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. I'd like to do just a few brief remarks. We recently held the first of 4 of the Act 65 working group meetings around the medical program. Anyone who wasn't able to attend can watch the recording on our YouTube page. This first meeting really was an introduction and a level setting opportunity so that all of the participants understand the parameters of the charge of Act. I want to thank everyone who was able to participate and share their thoughts. We know how critical this program is for patients and how little attention is received over the years. We've prepared a doodle poll. I think it went out this morning to help facilitate scheduling the next meeting. Depending on people's availability, I'm going to try and tackle some of the direct charges of Act 65 at that next meeting, including which conditions should qualify a person for a medical card. I'd like to talk about a new process for adding qualifying conditions that's evidence-based. I'd like to talk about best practices around treatment protocols and dosing, and then also about how to improve patient and provider education. Then at the third meeting, I'd like to dig into what we need to do to fundamentally improve the kind of access, affordability, and quality of the program, both from a statutory and a regulatory perspective. So we'll keep our calendar up to date with the details of these meetings. They are fully remote. There is no kind of physical location, and just keep an eye on our event calendar once we get that scheduled, probably for later in September. I wanted to also just say a few quick words about packaging. As most people watching are aware, our rules do not permit the use of plastic packaging for cannabis and cannabis products that are intended for sale to the public. When it comes to cannabis flower, which does not require child-resistant packaging by law, there are a lot of non-plastic options out there to comply with this prohibition. Of course, when it comes to manufactured cannabis products like edibles, which pose a greater risk of accidental ingestion and therefore require more protective packaging, we recognize that there are fewer non-plastic options that achieve child resistance. We created a process whereby a licensee could seek a temporary waiver to this plastic ban if they could demonstrate that plastic packaging was necessary to achieve child resistance and there were no other realistic options. I want to be clear, we're not willing to grant plastic waivers for flower because it does not require child resistance and there are plenty of non-plastic packaging alternatives. However, early on, when the industrial supply chains were still partially disrupted by the pandemic and we were in a rush to license people and get this market up and running on schedule, we granted a 1-year waiver to a safely lock compostable bag for edibles. The 1-year anniversary is coming up on September 4th, and the CCB will not be renewing this waiver as it's no longer necessary. There are many other non-plastic options available for edibles, and so the original justification for us granting this waiver is gone. I don't think this should come as a surprise to anyone who's currently using these safely locked pouches. At the time we approved the waiver request, we noted very clearly on our website that this was a temporary 1-year waiver. And anyone who registered a product with this packaging was reminded in their product registration response that this waiver was temporary and there was no guarantee that it would be renewed. But what does this mean for the industry? For one, anyone with these safely locked bags, you can use your existing inventory until it's exhausted, and anyone whose products have been registered with this pouch can continue to use it until that registration expires. Number 2, we have a number of examples of compliant non-plastic packaging on our website at ccb.vermont.gov/plastic-waivers. And thanks to Kyle's dogged research on this, it's looking likely that we will be approving a new PHA pouch soon. So stay tuned for that. And then 3, more fundamentally, the examples that we provide on our website are not the only packaging solutions out there. Any sort of cardboard or metal container that has child resistant mechanisms should be fine. And just to clear up a point of confusion, you don't have to ask for a waiver request if your packaging solution is child resistant and it does not use plastic. That being said, if you have questions about whether a specific non-plastic package is okay, before you want to buy it in bulk, you can ask your compliant agent about it, or you can email ccb.compliance@vermont.gov. Okay, we're running short on time.
Yeah, I'll be very quick, and I just wanted to compound or elaborate on a couple points that the chair made. As we were looking at this waiver process when we first started getting going, it was not intended necessarily to find this holy grail perfect plastic option that would go against what our regulations actually say. We wanted to provide an opportunity for folks to show us what was truly necessary. Preference here is only a part of the equation. It has to be truly necessary. It does look like we're going to make an announcement imminently about a new bag that's a lot more environmentally geared towards how Vermont handles waste. The Safely Lock bag, while it was the best we could find at the time, it doesn't break down in a landfill setting. Whether we like it or not, a majority of the everyday items that we use as a collective society end up in a landfill, despite our best efforts to recycle or reuse or compost or whatever. Industrial composting in Vermont, they don't take bioplastics. There's no method to get it from your doorstep to an industrial composter either. There's a lot that needs to happen to improve that infrastructure. So from a systems perspective, we want to work backwards. This new bag will do a lot better in a landfill setting and in a home compost setting. I believe it's a cheaper per unit price than the Safety Lock option. You can screen print directly on this option. I don't want to take full credit for finding it. A member of the community brought it to my attention a couple months ago, but in those couple months, I have spent time with the CEO, who is headquartered in Sydney, Australia, their US leads, their cannabis leads. We need to cross one more T and dot one more I, but it's looking like it's a superior option to the Safely Lock bag. So we recognize this might come as a shock to some, whether or not it should be. The chair already said that it shouldn't be. And again, we're out to take as much plastic out of our industry as we possibly can. It's all about what is truly necessary. And I'll leave it.
Great. We have one last administrative request from the licensing team before we turn to the agenda. So we are deep into our first round of license renewals, which is exciting. We would ask that any licensee who may have a question about their renewal should email ccb.applications@vermont.gov in addition to their compliance agent, and that will help facilitate kind of the getting answers out to the team as quick or to the field as quickly as possible. Other than that, just need to approve the minutes from our last meeting from July 19th. You guys had a chance to look at those minutes?
Yes.
Yep. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's turn to the agenda. We have a guest here from the Department of Health. I know, Julie, you've been working on this issue with them. Can you just kind of introduce the issue for us?
Yeah, so I'll just do a little bit of table setting here. So we're grateful to have Roy Belcher here from DSU. I won't steal any of your data or information, Roy, but just to kind of set the intent, I'll bring the group back to our mission as a board, which was to safely, effectively, and equitably implement this program. And in our guiding principles, as a board, we sat down, you all remember, a couple years ago now, and developed some guiding principles. And in that, we endeavored to develop a regulatory program that, aimed to prevent youth use and also was public education focused. And we also included in those principles that legalizing cannabis and cannabis sales could be a harm reduction if it was done responsibly. And so that's why conversations like this and the partnerships that we have with DSU are important. From a board perspective, I think it's important for us to hear this information and to get all the information about, how cannabis is moving through the community and the impact of that. And then from a, cannabis business community perspective, I want to make sure that folks understand that when we're talking about, accidental ingestion or these numbers and issues that we're talking about related to youth use, it's not intended to demonize or marginalize anyone who is legally purchasing cannabis in our adult use system. But from a responsible business perspective, what can we do as responsible business owners and folks who are responsible for this marketplace to make sure that it is in fact safe for the adults that choose to participate in it? So that's the kind of table setting for this. And Roy, unless my colleagues have something else to share, I'll let you sort of introduce the report that you're going to talk about and the project that we've all been working on.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Holbert. Again, my name is Roy Belcher. I use he, him pronouns, and I am with the Division of Substance Use Programs at the Vermont Department of Health. The unit that I work on oversees quite a few different sort of buckets, but one of them is communications and marketing. And that's sort of what brings me to the table here today. So I've prepared a few slides that just give a bit of an overview of our division and kind of the work that we do. And then I'm going to be speaking a little bit about a forthcoming data product. Unfortunately, that is kind of caught up in the review system right now, so I'm not able to share a ton of very specific data points, but I can give the name of the report and, as I said, an overview of what's going to be in there so that people can watch for it when it comes out. But based on that report that is forthcoming, we've started some interesting work with our partners over at the Cannabis Control Board. So I'll be talking a bit about that as well. And again, we've been working on this with Commissioner Holbert and Nellie. So if either of you have anything that you'd like to share as I move through the slides, I would welcome that. So let me just, this is a bit of a interactive, I'm going to play one video, so I want to make sure that I share correctly. I've got to click the little button. Okay, so as the agenda notes, we're going to be talking about data-informed cannabis lock bag pilot project. I do want to make it really clear that this is a pilot project that we're talking about. So I'll be anxious to hear feedback from the people that are on this call or anybody that watches the recording of this meeting. But this is a collaboration of our division at the Health Department and the Cannabis Control Board. So a little bit of information about the Division of Substance Use Programs, DSU, formerly known as ADAP, the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs Division. We changed our name in the last couple of years. We're one of 11 divisions at VDH, at the Department of Health. We have around 50 staff in our division, and we have 8 different units, including clinical services, quality management, performance management, harm reduction and recovery, prevention services, planning, and community services, which is my unit, policy and operations. And so we're part of a big ecosystem over here at the health department. The messaging that our team, that my unit oversees that relates specifically to cannabis primarily fall into these 5 campaigns. Let's Talk Cannabis is our flagship campaign that relates to cannabis, and it really focuses on, the way that we often frame it is, we are not anti-cannabis in our division, but we're pro-brain health, and that stands true for kind of all substances. So we just really want to make sure that people have the information that they need to make healthy choices that are within the bounds of the law. So the Let's Talk Cannabis campaign really does that, and the video that I'm going to be showing on the next slide kind of, I think, will sum that up nicely. We also have our Parent Up campaign, which is really excellent. That spans all substances, but cannabis is one of the primary ones. And it really seeks to give parents the tools that they need to be able to have fruitful conversations with their children about substance use and making choices and healthy choices therein. We have our Healthy at Home campaign, and this is actually overseen by our Division of Environmental Health, but all things related to substances fall to our division for Healthy at Home. And it's really about much of what we're talking about today, which is, and I heard a little feedback there, I hope people can hear me. is about safe storage and making sure that everything from substances, be they over-the-counter, legal substances, illegal substances, we're starting to talk more about safe storage of firearms under this campaign. So just making sure that people understand that they have a lot of opportunities within their home to take that next step in terms of keeping the occupants safe by safely storing these potentially dangerous things. One More Conversation is a campaign that we developed that focuses on people that are pregnant and healthcare providers to help facilitate what can often be difficult conversations when we're talking about substance use and substance use disorder, but making sure that that's an open and free-flowing conversation between people that are pregnant and their healthcare providers. And then the fifth campaign is Outlast, and this is actually an interesting one. It really focuses on people that are aged 13 to 17 who identify with kind of the snowboarder and skateboarding community, and it aims to speak about alcohol and cannabis use prevention in particular. And this campaign is of interest, especially because our research has shown that this messaging loses efficacy when it comes from an entity like the health department. So this is actually very much intentionally not branded as coming from the health department, but it's through the magic of social media, it gets into the hands of that age group and people that identify with those cultures. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the campaigns that we have that touch on cannabis. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Let's Talk Cannabis campaign, because that's really where we initially were able to connect with the Cannabis Control Board. So early on, of course, as retail cannabis came to our state, we recognized, and I think Cannabis Control Board, to your credit as well, recognized that this is a cross-cutting issue, and we all want to be on the same page, and we all want the same goal, and that is we want to have a healthy state and people making healthy decisions. So beyond the mandates that are written out in legislation for our entities to actually interact, we were able to connect initially with Nellie and then also with Commissioner Holbert. And our first kind of collaboration was this asset for our Let's Talk Cannabis campaign. And our office had realized that there wasn't the messaging that was getting out there around cannabis and retail cannabis was fairly siloed. Like we were talking about health impacts, you all were talking about legality and kind of the rules around it. AOT was talking about driving, so we really wanted to present something to our consumers about that was cross-cutting. And so we developed this short video, which I'm just going to play here. It's about it's not 20 minutes, it's about 1 minute.
It's legal in Vermont. So let's talk cannabis. First, if you're 21 or older, you can buy and grow cannabis within the legal limit. But keep your bud in Vermont. It's illegal under federal law, and don't cross state or national borders with it, or use it in public spaces or on federal lands. Also, landlords, employers, cities, and counties may have stricter rules than the state. Now be aware, cannabis use comes with risks. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, don't use. And when it comes to young people, it's not okay. Their brains are still developing, and cannabis use can have lifelong consequences. Adults, if you choose to use, do it responsibly. Store all cannabis products where children and pets can't see or reach them. Today's weed is a lot stronger than it used to be. It affects everyone differently, especially edibles. They can take hours to fully kick in. And never drive while under the influence of cannabis or other substances. You could hurt someone or get a DUI. There's so much more to talk about. Let's continue the conversation on letstalkcannabisvt.com.
And so, as I said, and as Commissioner Holbert mentioned earlier, we were really trying to take a tone with that was in no way sort of slighting people that are using cannabis within the legal bounds and that are of age. We're really just trying to provide information in a non-stigmatizing manner. So the forthcoming report that I mentioned earlier, I want to move on to talking a bit about that and then our next project that we're working on with Cannabis Control Board. So the current title of this report is Ingestion and Non-Fatal Overdoses in Vermont Youth and Young Adults. And that it's not specific to cannabis, obviously. The substances that are included in this report include over-the-counter drugs, prescription medications, stimulants, opioids, and cannabis. So they're all included in this one report. And the report pulls from data from our Essence system, which is the electronic surveillance system for the early notification of community-based epidemics. And what we're looking at there is our emergency department data of non-fatal overdoses that involve those substances that I mentioned among Vermont youth under the age of 25. Now, these are classified as non-fatal overdoses. That just has to do with how things are reported at the emergency department level, and it differentiates from poisonings caused by differentiates poisonings caused by drugs as opposed to other toxic substances like cleaning agents or pesticides. So overall, the reporting that we're looking at notes increases in unintentional non-fatal overdoses or overdose ED visits among that age group between 2018 and 2022. When the report comes out, you'll see that there were some increases in 2020 and 2021. Some are starting to return back to pre-pandemic levels, but at the time of the reporting through 2022, we're still seeing things elevated. We anticipate that this report will be out in October of 2023, and so I apologize again that I'm not able to get into more of the specifics of the data that are there, but I'd be happy to come back and present again when the report is actually released. While we are waiting for the report, we do know the direction that the data are going to take us. And so we've been working with the Cannabis Control Board on this safe storage collaboration, this pilot project that we've been talking about. So a few months back, we were able to identify $20,000 in one of our marketing contracts. It was savings in a licensing agreement that we had. And we connected again with our partners at the Cannabis Control Board and asked because something that we had discussed on a previous meeting was the importance of facilitating and supporting safe storage in homes. So with that $20,000, we were able to secure 3,000 lock bags. They're pictured here. The images that you're seeing on here are the two sides of the brochure that we'll be inserting into these bags here. But they're pretty simple bags. They're lockable. They have a locking mechanism that you can change the 3-digit code on to whatever you like. They are intended to be smell proof. And they're a fairly good size, a bit larger than like a pencil case or something like that. So our partners at CCB have identified some retail partners on your end that would be willing to make these bags available. We're going to be making them available to customers of retail establishments free of charge. And in each bag, we're going to include the instructions on how to use the locking mechanism and then this really simple brochure. And the brochure just on one side, there's a link to a survey so that we can kind of evaluate the efficacy of the pilot program and see if it's something that we'd like to invest in going forward. It asks questions about the actual product itself and whether or not it meets the needs of the consumer. And then on the back side, we have a link to our Healthy at Home campaign to provide more information about safe storage in the home. So we really wanted to keep the resources. It was very tempting, of course, to pack these full of lots of different information and different campaign assets that we have. But we really wanted to keep it very simple for the consumer and just provide them with the bare minimum that they would need. And we're in the process of developing displays that will promote these bags specifically to retail cannabis customers who have young children and or pets, because that's really the demographic that we're targeting with these bags. So that is pretty much everything that that I wanted to share. I encourage people to reach out again if they have thoughts on the project or questions. But I can stop sharing, and if people have questions, I guess I'll hand it back over to the control board side to decide what to do next. But thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. I know you have a hard stop in 4 minutes, but are there questions?
I just had one. The video, I saw that a lot, I guess, over the last summer. Is it still out there? Is that still playing, or is that?
It's still, yes, we have a few 15-second derivatives. So we're working with our marketing vendor Media Buys. It will pop up when you least expect it. I think right now we're doing some broadcast, but it's probably not showing up so much in like your online media. But
I feel like
we
I've
have
seen it on
a
Hulu.
media strategy, so it will show up again.
Okay, I saw it on YouTube a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it on Hulu or something along those lines. I don't have any questions. Thank you so much. And just for, everybody listening, like, we have jurisdiction to the point, mostly we have jurisdiction to the point with which these products leave a retail establishment. We cannot control how you store these in your home. So if you have young kids, if you have pets, obviously we all know young kids don't, if they ingest cannabis flower, they're not going to feel a psychoactive effect. My brother's a veterinarian, and I know firsthand that that is not the same with pets. They process, metabolize whatever flower differently than humans do. So I think it's a good point, and thank you, Roy, for being here today.
Roy, I really appreciate the partnership here. This question might take longer than the 2 minutes you have left, so I can certainly follow up. But are there best practices from other states or strategies that we used around tobacco that helped kind of decrease kind of ease of access or perception of harm or increased perception of harm, for cannabis that the Department of Health is looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking to our sister agencies in other states for what's working. We recently did some collaboration. Vaping is an interesting intersection of tobacco and cannabis. And so we recently infused cannabis messaging into a tobacco control program campaign called Unhyped to kind of bridge that divide. So we're always looking for those opportunities. And anytime we're at national conferences, our primary marketing vendor, the Rescue Agency on Behavior Change, we actually licensed Let's Talk Cannabis from California. So that campaign originated in California, and we adapted it for Vermont. So we're always looking for those opportunities, but we welcome feedback and insights. Or if you would like to have a more substantive conversation about that, I'd be happy to hop on a call.
Well, no, I mean, our goals are aligned. We have a public health mission, but we've said it from the beginning. We're not really the experts on what messaging works or what the appropriate, and so I'm just glad that you're on top of it and that you're doing this work with us. So really appreciate everything you're doing. And it's 1:30 now. I don't know if you have to jump, but I really just thank you for being here and working with us.
Yeah, I do have to head off, but I'll just close by saying I really appreciate Nellie's support. She's been a wonderful partner to work with, and Commissioner Holbert has given us a lot of time. So we also appreciate your efforts with all of this. And yeah, as the project evolves, we'll share information and they can report out to you all.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, moving down the agenda, we wanted to invite some folks from the administration to talk about opportunities for flood relief that might apply to cannabis licensees. I think I saw Tim. Yep, Tim, and is Mary on as well?
I
Great.
am on. Hello.
Great. So thank you for being here. I know that in the immediate aftermath of the kind of July 11th, I think it was, flooding in Montpelier and around the state, really. And it hasn't really stopped since then. But we sent out an initial survey. FEMA and the SBA were here in Vermont saying, cannabis is not going to be eligible, cannabis businesses, for any sort of the FEMA or SBA loans. We've subsequently heard that we think that maybe some of the state money might be. We sent out a survey. I think he had just slightly under 20 responses of various business types that have been either fully or partially destroyed by the flood. And the problem, of course, is that at that time, a lot of people were still trying to dig out and clean their plants and weren't sure whether or not the kind of root rot or some sort of other detritus or mold or whatever else might kind of set in. And so that number probably will grow over the next couple weeks. And so it's really great to have you here to talk about some of the maybe state options that our cannabis licensees have access to. And I don't know if that was an appropriate introduction to you all, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that issue.
Yeah, well, I guess I can start. It's good to see you all, by the way.
Good to see you, Tim.
So, yes, great to see you guys. So, as you know, we started this business emergency gap assistance program where there was $19 million set aside for businesses and then $1 million set aside for agricultural businesses and farms. And since then, a lot of people have applied. We had to put together an application pretty quick. I know our department, 75% of us have been repurposed to review grants and work the administration of those grant applications that have come in. We've set it up where it's a first come, first serve. As far as the cannabis side of things, we did have a question on the original application, and it was decided that it wasn't necessary because they decided it's a non-factor. The only factor was if it was an agricultural, if it was grown, they could check the box, and then our agency of ag would then handle those applications. But we have it on our review sheet, but it's kind of a moot point now. So it's too bad we don't have that stat alone. But I did go through our database, and right now I know that there's one Montpelier dispensaries has been an applicant. That's what I know so far, without going through and doing a whole name search into this platform that is being designed. We definitely are building it as we fly here. We're building the airplane as we're flying. But I can give you some stats on 688 applications were started, but we've received 542 that have been fully submitted. A lot of those folks, there's 150 that are incomplete as of last night. I mean, this is the changing numbers. As of today, it's changing, but we're sending them back for a variety of reasons. A lot of it's either they don't have enough detail on their itemized cost estimate, but the majority of it is just form issues as far as the W-9 is signed in the wrong place, or they checked the wrong box, or have the wrong tax classification. So really no big deal. We're sending it back as 3 or 4 times if needed for every applicant. They don't lose their place in line. It is a first come, first serve. But I can tell you, we've already approved 35% of the applications with a total of $1.7 million over that. We've already approved, and more today. 6 have been denied for a variety of reasons. Some folks actually have received enough relief where it covers their losses. So that seems to be the most typical. Or they're not in the state of Vermont. That has been one. That's when, they're in New York. That really didn't work out too well. But only 6 denied, and that's about it. They're coming in still, and we're still reviewing them. And I believe Mary has some updates on how many ag has received and how that's going.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. So from the agricultural side, some of the cannabis growers are coming over to the agricultural sector that is eligible under the agricultural sector. And this is a very rough estimate because similar to what Tim said, we don't have a tabular checklist of like, is this cannabis or not? But I did look through, this is very unscientific data analysis, but I did look through the legal business name and I saw about 9 or 10 applications that had associated with growing cannabis or hemp, which I know there's a distinction there, but we have about 8 or 9 applications there. And so just as a refresher, this program is for property damages, and those property damages include real estate, machinery or equipment, or inventory loss. And one of the eligible things under inventory loss is crop loss. So that's where we're seeing a lot of our agricultural applications claiming damages is that they've lost their crops, they can't harvest them, they can't sell them anymore due to the flooding. So it looks like those 9 or 10 hemp cannabis operations have been claiming damages under that inventory loss, and they've ranged between $11,000 and $500,000. So this is all very preliminary. This isn't official because we haven't made it through a lot of these reviews yet, so it's unverified. But I just wanted to give that update just to sort of a ballpark that we do have these growers that are applying to the program, and they are in our queue to review. We just haven't made it to all of our applications yet. And then high level agriculture, we have received about 110 applications under the agricultural sector, and we're about a third of the way looking at some of those applications. But similar to what Tim said, we have a lot of applications going back incomplete because they're got incorrect W-9s or insufficient documentation. So it's really a very fluid system. So we've received a good batch of applications, but it's really we're reviewing them as soon as we can. We're sending them back for additional information. And so it's continually evolving.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Tim and Mary, thank you so much for being here. And I know firsthand, because I worked for both of your respective agencies during the COVID grant process, how hard and how resources are diverted to focusing on issues like this within the DED and AgDev and the broader, VAFM family as it relates to relief. I think, we've got a number of folks on that are listening that are either cultivators, manufacturers, retailers. I know that distinction might point somebody in the ag or ACCD direction, but I think it might just be, just generally, like, where should folks go if they think they might qualify? What type of information should they look to provide, including other opportunities, as you mentioned, other, grants or forgivable loans that they might already be looking at in relation to the flooding? And, what's the payout look like? Is it a set figure? Is it kind of reflective of your individual property or inventory loss? Or is it just a set, I'm going to make up a number, 10 grand for each applicant, or just kind of those details? What I know things are still fluid. If you have any kind of expected turnaround time for if somebody does get a complete application before you, what that kind of process looks like for communication between the agency and the applicant, and before that dollar hits their bank account.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. And Mary, interject anytime when I sound stupid. Okay. Yeah. So, obviously, going to acc.vermont.gov is the first place to go. That's where you're going to find the application portal for the BGAP program. And there's also, you'll indicate what kind of business you are, and it'll go to the appropriate place when you do so. The reality is that, we're doing it up to $999,000 in losses. You're going to receive $20,000 max. And that's pretty much, and then under that, it's 20% of your loss under $100,000. So the big thing is we're trying to get people is to actually get cost estimates, get invoices, get quotes. We actually have a contractor tool on there because we realize that some people, the contractor's so busy, it's hard to get quotes. But there's a tool with average prices that people can actually put together that we will accept those figures. within that contractor tool when you do an estimate of damage. You have to prove that you either own or lease. And obviously, a lot of landlords are picking up certain things in a lease, and the tenants are others. So we just want to make sure that that's appropriate. And also, that you are you filed your taxes and you were in business before July 10th in 2023. And obviously, there's a lot of details to get everything together. Filling out the W-9 is a key factor, I think. But that's basically it. I mean, I can tell you the average figure so far that we're handing out is about $12,600 is the average award that we're doing right now. And of all the ones that have actually been paid, we've had like 51 it's gone through the whole process and been paid. About 12,600 is the average award. But obviously, if you're over $1 million, that's called an enhanced award, and we actually have 12 of those, and I know they're reviewing those today. So that means if you have over $1 million in net damages after relief, after insurance, you still have $1 million. They're looking at that as a case by case, because those are bigger, and those most likely will receive larger awards to make themselves whole. I mean, that's the whole idea. Is this is not going to make anyone whole. It's just going to help in a small fashion, and we realize that the cost of things are, pretty high, and even getting a contractors and the cost after COVID of materials has gone up too. So this is all, big snowball effect. But like I said, this is just a way to give a little shot in the arm and see what we can do, and trying to get it done as quickly as possible. What I miss, Mary?
I think you covered it pretty well. I would encourage, if there's any business owners or anyone on the call that hasn't applied yet and thinks, okay, maybe I should apply to this program, the ACCD website's a great place to start. And there's some great frequently asked questions on there. If you are a cultivator or fall into that growing category, I might not have my terminology right, but and you think you fall under that agricultural sector, there is a link to the agricultural webpage, which has almost the same information as ACCD, but we do have a frequently asked questions that's more tailored to agriculture. Some questions around, how do I document my crop loss, and what type of documentation we might find acceptable for that? Because as Tim mentioned, the documentation piece is important for an application to have that. So it asks you to estimate your loss. And if you say, for example, you have $100,000 crop loss, we want to know what was the crop, what are the units that were lost, what's the value per unit lost. We need a little bit more detail than just, I lost $20,000 worth of my crop. So we have some examples on our frequently asked question. And then for the real estate and machinery equipment stuff, they do have a nice, ACCD has on their website now a nice kind of cost contractor calculator that can help you get to those estimates as well.
And I also want to say that, we have a contract with the Vermont Professionals of Color Network to provide technical assistance, and they're providing technical assistance to help with this application. As well, we'll provide any translation services for folks in any language as well that's out there. And I think we've had 3 applicants have utilized that service so far.
So, one thing that I alluded to earlier, is that a lot of our cultivators are actively trying to salvage whatever they can of their crop that was either damaged, and they're going to get partial harvest because of it. They're trying to actively plant, take out the dead plants, the damaged plants, to put in new seedlings or clones, which aren't going to fully mature. So their loss is going to be it's going to be a percent, it's going to be like, it's 20% less than what I should have gotten if I was growing for a full year or for a full season. And I know that this is a finite pot of money, and it's first come, first serve. And if you just do the 688 applications that you receive times 20,000, you're closing in on 20 million already. Should these people who don't know what their damage is yet until they harvest, should they go ahead and file an application?
Is there have you
I would say
identified
yes.
a closing date? Obviously, you're saying yes, but have you identified a cutoff date yet for this?
You know, I mean, I know that it's probably going to be money expended, or I mean, I think
Okay.
that's what's. But I mean, I would say yes, because you want to get in there, you want to get on that list, and then actually do your best guesstimates. I mean, that's what we're saying is, you know, it's being truthful and honest as possible. We're gonna research this, but I mean, and Mary, please, I mean, because I think this is more on your end, but and we realize that it's very hard to indicate the true damage and loss. So it's best attempts. You know, I mean, this is supposed to be helpful. I mean, and
Yeah.
and that's all. So we're trying to give people benefit of doubt on, I think, a lot of this. So.
And this is, you don't have to have an answer for this, but there's a very kind of bright line legal distinction between indoor and outdoor with respect to whether it's kind of treated as agriculture or not. Do indoor cultivators that are using kind of lights or hydroponic systems or, controlled environment agriculture, Mary, do you want to see them kind of slotted in the agriculture lane, or would you prefer to see them, Tim, in the kind of commercial lane?
I don't know if we have any yet.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
You have hydroponic growers for like tomatoes or lettuce or anything like that have seen that are applying under agriculture?
I haven't seen any hydroponics under agriculture, but I do want to say though that the applications, when they come in, we do have the ability to reassign them to the appropriate or while we work with the applicant to make sure they're in the appropriate sector. So if someone applies under manufacturing and they should actually be under agriculture or vice versa, we can work with the applicant to make sure they're in the right sector, because it's the same application, it's the same process, same workflow. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we can adjust as needed once we look at the information.
Yeah. Then I just had one more, if you don't mind. We know of a number of impacted businesses that are in the process of getting licensed. They haven't been licensed by us yet, but they have their LLCs. They've signed leases. They've got started the kind of process of applying. But they're not technically allowed to operate yet because they don't have a license. Are those people included for this? And again, you don't have to have an answer because it's probably not something you guys.
No, if they were started business before that date, and that means they were actually involved in getting that business going, they're going to be eligible. I mean, we're probably going to ask for a few more details from them, but they will be eligible. And actually to prove that they've started the process of applying for you. I mean, that's all. We look for a little proof that they existed.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. We actually did have one of our applications that we have made through and recommended for approval was a cannabis grower, and this person had just started. So we asked for some additional information, but they weren't even listed on the website yet, which was what prompted the additional questions, but they were able to provide some information to show that they had started preparations and that their business was establishing, and we considered that eligible.
Yeah, Mary, and I have connected Abby with our licensing team to help with some of those questions.
Great.
Any other questions?
No, it's a great conversation.
Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. It, might be a shot in the arm, as Tim said, but,
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's what. And, I don't know what kind of agenda Shaws you are, but I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about any of our other programs that we work in with you as well while I'm here.
Absolutely, for sure, yeah.
I mean, I have some data on the Cannabis Business Development Fund and the social equity beneficiary payments. We've given out 28 $138,000 to 28 folks so far. And that means 26 asked for the $5,000, received the $5,000 maximum, and 2 folks requested less. So but I just got that figure today, so that's the latest on that. And I believe there's a new since the new fiscal year that I think there's going to be some more social equity applicants coming our way. So we're looking at that. Also, our roads, our contract with roads that we're providing technical assistance, they're almost have fulfilled at least the monetary portion of this. And I think we'll be talking to you all about what our next steps are. So whether or not, I mean, hopefully put another technical assistance contract out there.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate the help. I mean, again, this is a industry that doesn't have access to traditional banking, doesn't have access to financing or loans because of our kind of one license per entity rule. There's very little kind of outside money coming into the state to help support this industry. So, you know, it's really helpful that you guys are doing all this work with our licensees. So thank you.
Ditto. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to see you all.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving down the agenda, we're going to have just a quick discussion around lab accreditation and ISO certification. And this is something that has been on the table for discussion from the outset. I know that ISO certification, there is a certification for cannabis testing. And, you know, I think the question comes down to, is the benefit of us requiring ISO accreditation for cannabis testing, like creating a cannabis certified lab through ISO, are the benefits of that worth the kind of detriment, I guess, to the labs, or even a prospective lab that might want to come to start in Vermont? And I don't know, Bryn, I know you've been doing some digging into this issue. I wonder if you want to maybe lay out some of the benefits for us.
Sure. So I think that this was a topic that came up in the first iteration of your rules, whether or not you wanted to require ISO certification for any testing labs that were to get a license. And we put it off initially, given the timelines that we had to work with. But you know, now that we have labs online that are coming up for renewal, we have, I think, a better understanding of what is required in order to certify that these labs are meeting the criteria that they need to meet in order to be licensed. And what they really essentially have to do is to provide months and months of method validation documentation to us in order to demonstrate that they have sufficiency in their testing. And that can take us really quite a long time to review. Also, we don't have many staff that are capable of reviewing this type of documentation and you know, have the education to understand it and to certify that these results are sufficient for our purposes. So I think that requiring a third party to conduct these types of analyses will both relieve our staff from the review process, but it will also put the board in a position of being better able to understand where our labs fall in their proficiency as compared to labs across the country, because the proficiency tests that are required for renewal once you've been accredited by one of these third-party businesses provides that data, provides validation data that shows like where one lab's test results fall in comparison to every other lab that's been accredited across the country. So I think it could improve things both on the staff side, but also perhaps improve sort of the data that's available to the board to understand how well our labs are doing in comparison to each other and in comparison to labs across the country.
Does that kind of decrease the incentive to lab shop amongst licensees?
I would suspect so, yes.
I was going to ask a similar question because I know that's a huge topic in other states with a lot more lab options than we have. I don't know if it's been a huge problem for us yet, at least. But do other states require this?
Yes, and I don't have that prepared for the board right now. I
Right.
have been sort of putting together a list of other states that require the ISO certification, but it's not unheard of, certainly. And so we wouldn't be the first.
And again, you might not have the answers yet, but if I was a lab that needed to go through this process, how intense or exhaustive is that process?
I think that it is a long, somewhat onerous process, and I think it also depends on if you're up and running already or if you're brand new. I think that if you've been you must be up and running for at least 6 months before they can start the accreditation process. Depending on whether you're up and running, that will sort of change the timeline for getting accredited. But I think in general, it takes around a year, maybe a year and a half for accreditation, given the amount of time that it takes for the full process. And that includes the auditor coming and doing the audit, providing the results of the audit to the lab responding to any issues that arose during the audit, and then the final accreditation. So I think from a timing perspective, it's onerous, a year and a half. And from a financial perspective, I don't know what every third party charges, but I think in general, an accreditation is around $5,000, maybe a little bit less for the first accreditation, renewal around the same.
Is the renewal a similar process where there's an audit and then there's time to cure if there's an issue?
Yes,
You just lose it.
yes. Although my understanding is that the audit doesn't happen every year; it happens every couple of years.
Do we think that our state lab will go in that direction too once it's fully established?
That
Do we know?
I think that if we were to require it of our,
That's what I'm getting at.
yes, I think that would be the goal
Yeah.
for the state lab eventually, and certainly it would be the goal if it were required of our licensees.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we can save up our discussion on whether or not, or a vote, or whatever we want to call it, and whether or not we want to do it for the next meeting or a meeting thereafter. I think what would obviously be important is if it's going to take that long, and we've got labs coming up for relicensure soon, just ensuring or checking on them to make sure they're following through with that obligation versus not allowing them to test anything until they receive that accreditation. Or else we're not going to be labs for a year.
Yeah.
But sure, we could figure that out.
Does it require a vote for us?
No, I think that I think that this is sort of the beginning of the conversation. I think that we would likely want to do this in rule if it were a requirement. So obviously the time has passed for it to be a part of the rule amendments that you just voted on. But given that it would be a significant change for what is required now for the labs, it made sense to put it on the agenda sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine this wouldn't be a shock to our current labs.
I don't think so, just especially given that it was a part of the conversation at our first iteration of the rules.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's some interest in it though. So maybe I can find out some more information for you for the next board meeting. We can look at other states that require it. And we can continue to think about it.
Are there other accreditation services other than ISO?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would imagine so, but I think this one maybe has the most legitimacy because it's.
It's
Okay.
certify everything.
I do.
Well, I shouldn't say everything, but
Many things.
Many
They
things.
certify many things.
any process-oriented things.
I seem to remember us having this conversation with Carrie back before Bryn, you were even with us, back when we were having meeting at Agency of Agriculture a long time ago. It seems to me that he was saying that they required for hemp testing, and I think the rules have changed subsequently, that they needed ISO certification or you needed to be substantially moving in that direction or something.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like the bridge we do to get there. Okay.
Yeah, that bridge is what I was trying to, I guess, poorly articulate. Bridge is a more concise way to describe it.
Great. All right. Anything more around ISO certification? This is really meant to just be the initial conversation to get the ball rolling.
Yep.
Okay. Coming back over to you, Bryn, for the executive director's report.
So this is this month's executive director report. We're starting out again, like we did last month, with a summary of the flood impact assessment survey results that went out. Since the last month, since the last board meeting, we really only received, I think, 7 or 8 additional survey responses. So not a huge number more, but this is more reflective of the entire pool of responses that we've gotten. So of that 157 responses that we got, 16 of them reported having some impact due to the flood. 9 of them were tier 1 cultivators, 2 were tier 2 cultivators, 1 was a tier 3, 1 a tier 5, 1 was a tier 2 manufacturer, and then 2 retailers reported some impact from the flood. So just a high level summary of the damage that was reported by these licensees. The cultivation impact was primarily described as oversaturation or standing water in grow areas, which cause root rot, stunted growth, powdery mildew, among other impacts. And the overall losses from those impacted licensees were reported anywhere from between 20 to 90% of the licensee's crop. So pretty significant damage to those people that did have an impact. And then the retail and the manufacturing I reported on last month. The retail impact was that one licensee had to move their operations entirely, and another reported some loss of sales due to road closures around their business, but there was no reported product loss. And then the one manufacturing licensee that was impacted lost $15,000 worth of equipment. And then the licensees that were impacted, of those 16 licensees that were impacted, 6 of them were priority status. So 4 were social equity licensees and 2 were economic empowerment. So any questions about that before I move on? So our public engagement summary here has been limited over the last month to the medical program study committee. So as the chair mentioned in the opening remarks, we had the first medical program study committee meeting on August 8th. There's a link to the video recording there. And our next one, that date should be set pretty soon, as the doodle poll went out this morning. So I'll move on to our adult use program licensing data. So this data is as of the 23rd of this month. So we're starting off with a little bit of demographic data on our licensees, principals, and controllers. So just some new data that our licensing team pulled for this meeting. So this one is based on gender. So this is the gender of all licensee, principal, and controllers. So you can see that the majority left that question blank, 54%. And then the 31% reported to be reporting themselves as male and 15% female, and nobody reported themselves as non-binary or other. Average age of our principals and controllers and our licensees is 47. And then we split this out. We dig a little bit deeper by looking at the social equity licensee demographic numbers. So for principals and controllers of social equity businesses, looks like we're about 45% reporting themselves to be male, 31% reporting themselves to be female, 23% leaving it blank, and then no one reporting themselves to be non-binary, and 1% reporting themselves to be other. Social equity licensees, principals, and controllers, average age is 41, so a little bit younger than the full group. So I'm going to move on to our licenses data, unless there's any questions about the demographics.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay. So this slide is looks a little bit different than what you've seen before. It shows the number of licenses issued based on tier and license type. And just, it starts to give a picture of how the renewals are flowing for each of the cultivation tiers. So that first column after the tier is the number of how many issued licenses there are. And then for the issued licenses, in the next column, it shows how many of those issued licenses have renewed. And then the next column is how many renewals are in progress now. And then the final column shows the percentage of those total licensees that have renewed or are in the process of renewing so far. And the reason we say so far there is that, as we all remember, we started issuing the cultivation licenses in May of last year, and we didn't close that application window the way we did this year. So we were accepting applications and issuing licenses to cultivators throughout the fall and the winter.
So that 94, for example, is not the initial licenses that are due for renewal right now. It's people who will be due for renewal over the course of the year.
That's right. That's the total number of licensees. So the reason I'm sort of framing it this way is it's a little bit early to look at renewal data because we really don't have a complete picture of everybody, since not everybody is up for renewal yet. So the numbers that are that percentage that's reflected over there is, only reflective of who's up for renewal so far. So again, it's not a complete picture, but just as we're starting to get into the renewal cycle here, we're trying to figure out ways to report renewal data that will give the board a picture of how the industry is changing with renewals.
Great to see how those percentages change.
Yeah, so they certainly will change over time, but it's just starting to get a little bit of a picture of what it is looking like. So that first slide was outdoor cultivators. Next slide is indoor cultivators. And we've got our mixed cultivators here. And this, this is sort of one example of how this early data could show us how the industry might be changing, given that there were only 2 Tier 3 mixed licenses in year 1. But so far, that number looks to be doubling, which could mean that people are growing their mixed cultivation business from a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 to a Tier 3. So obviously, this data will evolve and become more meaningful over time, but just an early picture of what the renewals are looking like so far. So only split out that data for the cultivation license types, given that we didn't start issuing other license types until later in the summer and fall of last year. So it really isn't time yet to look at the renewal data for other types of licenses. And then this slide, again, just trying to give sort of an early picture of renewals. This is the list of licensees that have confirmed that they will not be renewing as of Monday. So we've got 13 confirmed non-renewals so far out of about 365 licensed cultivators. And again, these are just cultivation licenses. So
are these people, this excludes people that are switching tiers?
Includes switching tiers. These are folks that have confirmed either with the licensing team or with the compliance team that they will not be seeking a license or renewing their license. So 13 of 365 is about 3.5%. So this obviously, again, is not a picture because it only includes people that either passed their renewal deadline or are coming up for renewal. It doesn't include everybody. But an interesting early picture here. So 7 of these 13 are either economic empowerment or social equity. And given that we are currently around, I think we're hovering around 60% of all of our licensees are in standard status and 40% are either social equity or economic empowerment as of this month. It does demonstrate that our attrition rates for licensees with a priority status is higher than our standard licensees. So take this for what it's worth. It's early information, doesn't reflect the full picture of who's up for renewal yet. But the licensing team is going to continue to think about how to report on the renewal data. And
Did we ask why? Do we survey these folks and ask why? I think we talked about that at one point. I don't know if that's happening yet.
that, I think that conversations are happening both with the licensing team and also the compliance team. I don't have like a summary of that information yet, but I would be happy to do it for another board meeting.
I think particularly for the social equity and the economic empowerment, because they had priority status, and then social equity because they, had a reduced licensing fee intentionally to help them succeed. I'd be interested to know what.
And I've talked to so many people with so many different goals.
Right, exactly.
One story, I know a guy that just wanted to repave his driveway.
Yep.
Other people, want this to be their full-time gig for the next X amount of years.
Right.
So there's a lot of, I'd be curious to see the whys.
I think it's important to know. Somebody was just testing it out, and somebody who intended to commit and then couldn't for some reason.
Yeah.
So we do have an exit interview that we're conducting. The compliance, I think it's the compliance staff is conducting that interview with any licensee that is confirming they're not going to renew. So that will be data that we can compile for the board to look at. Ready to move on?
Yep.
Thank you. So here we have a little bit of a different picture of what our licensed canopy capacity looks like. It used to be a great big wall chart, and we've put it into sort of this bar graph format instead. So these numbers reflect all issued licenses, not approved licenses, and it includes the canopy size of all issued licenses as of Monday, I believe. So it's a pretty up to the minute reflection of what our licensed canopy capacity looks like. And in a minute, I'm going to compare it to what what it looks like our utilized canopy.
And this is also total canopy, not flowering canopy.
That's right.
So everybody's
Total licensed canopy size.
Does the indoor make any assumptions for multiple harvests? This is just like the canopy they're licensed to grow at one given time.
So no, it does not. So now here's a bar graph that shows our utilized licensed canopy. And these numbers are based on a subset of our licensees. So this is not every licensee that factors into this picture. So the information is based on our cultivation site visits. And the compliance team has visited this year about a third of all of our cultivation licensees. So this is accurate data based on just a subset, a third of all of our cultivation licensees. And those cultivation site visits for the indoor were done March and April, and for outdoor, they were done May through June. So that's what this data is based on. So you can see our indoor cultivation utilization of their canopy is less than 50%. Outdoor is around a little bit above 75%. And this chart just does a comparison of what the utilized canopy looks like in comparison to the licensed canopy. So licensed canopy is the light green on the bottom. Utilized is dark green on the top. So it is somewhat of a prediction since it doesn't reflect the actual data based on every single licensee, but I think it offers a good prediction for what the full market utilization looks like.
Did you factor in those 13 folks that are not going to join us
Yes.
next year?
Yeah.
I think as we get more renewal data, this is something that we should continue to get an update on every month to decide if we're inching too close to our ceiling or our projected ceiling.
Any other questions about those slides? I'll move on to some other. So this is the slide that summarizes the total kind of number of submissions that that the licensing and compliance teams have received since the last board meeting. So 66 new licensing application submissions. That I believe includes renewal submissions. Yes, it does. So not just new licenses, but also renewals. 318 product registration submissions, and 206 employee ID card application submissions just since the last board meeting. Next is our areas of density chart for the retail locations. This looks largely the same. Burlington hasn't changed since the last board meeting. Rutland has gained 2 retail establishments that are in the queue. And then Morrisville, I think, went up because they've got 1 more in the queue than they had last month. Didn't give the map to you guys this month because mostly the pictures looking the same.
It's on our website, right?
It is, yes. And that is, yep, always kept up to date. So here are some product registration numbers based on status. So as of Monday, there were just over 3,500 total product registration applications that were submitted, and 2,651 registered products. So of those sort of that fall in between, the majority of them are incomplete. 73 are incomplete, which means that the staff have reviewed them and sent them back to the licensee with information about how to complete their submission. So looking like our response time on these is pretty similar to the way it was last month.
If someone grows a particular cultivar, do they have to re-register, or they have to register each time they harvest and test and so forth and package, right? They have to re-register every time they harvest that cultivar?
No, they have to resubmit their test results, but a
Okay.
product registration per cultivar is good for a year.
Okay. So we theoretically have 2,600 products like out there on the market now. Is that what this slide is showing?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yes. And here's a little bit of a picture of what those products look like. So by product type, we've still got the majority is flower. I think this has dropped a percentage point maybe, or a couple of percentage points over the last couple of months. Edibles and extracts are growing. And other, as a reminder, that 3% other includes things like transdermal patches, seed clones. Okay, moving on to the compliance data. So this is a summary of our advertising responses since the beginning of time. So we've received in total 130 advertising submissions since we started accepting them in November of last year. And our approval and denial rate is hovering just around 60-40. So it's improving a little bit as time goes on. I think it was about 50-50 in the spring. So our reasons for denial are still primarily that folks are not providing sufficient data to demonstrate that the ad venue meets that 15% use audience composition threshold. 35% missing the health warning, 11% didn't provide enough information for the staff to review, 9% offered a prize or a giveaway of cannabis in the advertisement, 4% were considered to be appealing to children, and 4% other. So, moving on. Total number of inspections since the last board meeting is 126. So we continue to be pretty steady, doing about 100 site visits, inspections a month. So there's a breakdown. Again, obviously, most of them are happening at cultivation sites.
Those are routine or surprise or all?
All of the above.
Okay.
Primarily routine. So this slide just does a little bit of a summary breakdown of the sort of work that the compliance team has been doing since the last board meeting. There have been 18 new complaints received since the last board meeting. We've undertaken 4 new investigations since the last board meeting. Those are the topics of those investigations listed there. Compliance team has issued 3 letters of warning, has offered compliance assistance in the realm of licensing for 4 licensees. What that means is that there are 4 licensees that have been operating without their license issued. They are sitting in approved status, but they have begun operating. So compliance team has been out to assist folks in understanding that they need to have their license issued before they can operate. And then 6 licensees, the team has been out to give some flood related guidance to. So a little bit of an overview of the work of the compliance team over the last month. This is obviously just a small subset of the work that they actually do. Doesn't include product registration or lots of other things. Okay, moving on to the medical program data, unless there are any other questions about that. So here's your picture that you see every month, and here's the close-up. Unfortunately, we do see a little bit of a further decline since the last board meeting. We now have 3,110 registered patients and 160 caregivers. So that represents a loss of 165 patients over the last month and a half, but a small gain of 2 caregivers. So just continuing to provide the chart so you guys can see the trajectory here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have a lot of work to do on the medical program still, but I was curious to see if anything would kind of start to change that downward trajectory, just given caregiver ratios and allotments.
Yeah, it's interesting that the rate of caregivers is declining at a slower rate than the patients. Tells me that most people are relying on the dispensaries, right? Or the people who are not renewing are relying, or if they're continuing to use medical cannabis or use cannabis, they're relying on the dispensaries. Okay.
At least from the folks that are registered with us and how they go about their medical use. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I want to cut your conversation short.
No.
Okay. Staff recommendations is next. So this month we have 4 applicants that staff is recommending for social equity status approval. We've got submission number 4637. Staff is recommending approval of social equity status as they meet the criteria for a social equity business applicant. Submission number 4452, recommending social equity status as they meet the criteria for social equity business applicants. Submission number 2918, again, this applicant meets the criteria for social equity business applicant. And lastly, submission 3109 also meets the criteria for social equity business applicant as defined in board rule. So staff is recommending approval of social equity status for these 4 applicants. Moving on to the staff recommendations for licensure, all of the applicants on the following several pages have demonstrated compliance with all of the requirements for their license as contained in both board rule and statute. So staff is recommending them for approval of their initial license or of their renewal. So the list this week is combined new license recommendation for a license for new applicants and also for applicants that are seeking to renew their license. So I will click through the slides here. I think there are 4 of them, but we've got 13 applicants up for their license for the first time. So 13 new licenses, 4 indoor tier 1 cultivators, 1 tier 1 manufacturer, 4 tier 2 manufacturers, and then 4 new retailers. And of those 13 applicants up for approval of their new license, 3 of them are economic empowerment and 1 is social equity. And the remaining are renewals. So we've got 34 renewals up for your approval this week and 13 new licenses. So here is the list. And we will post this on the website so everybody can see it. There you have it.
List.
Go through it slowly one more time.
Sure.
So 13 new and 34
Renewals.
Okay.
Was anyone on the email blast that doesn't appear here?
There is one applicant that we listed on the agenda that was up for approval that we did have to remove because their fire safety was not completed in time. And that applicant was a retail applicant.
All right. Thank you, Brent.
Sure.
Any questions for Ben?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board accept each of the recommendations as made to us in this meeting.
I second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I think public comment is next on the agenda. So if you've joined us and would like to make a public comment, if you join kind of via the video link, please raise your virtual hand. We'll try our best to call on you in the order that you raise your hand, and then we'll move on to people that join via the phone if there are any.
Hello, thanks so much for having public comment. My name is Jessie Lynn Dolan. I am a registered nurse for a very long time of my career. I specialize in opioid use disorder, both in teenagers, pregnancy, and infant withdrawal, as well as research at the University of Vermont. I appreciate the Vermont Department of Health speaking to us today, but I would like to just please comment that asking them to consider changing their language would be very supportive and help us educate the community rather than continue to offer a fear-based approach. We know the word overdose appropriately comes with a lot of fear and misinformation. And as I've mentioned, as somebody who's specialized in opioid use disorder for a very long time in my career, and am now working to help educate Vermonters and bud tenders as a Vermont vendor trainer educator for cannabis, I do think it's very helpful for us to use different language in our approach, as you guys have chosen to use the words cannabis instead of marijuana. I think it's the same idea of us using the word overconsume instead of overdose. When we think of overdose, we often think of opioids or fatal overdoses. So if they could consider, please, looking at changing their language from an education purpose, we need to help reduce fear and stigma and misinformation to then actually give people the correct supportive information, and differentiating the word overdose versus overconsumption, I think is extremely important in that. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessie Lynn.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Hey, this is Robert Ronci at Garcia's Tobacco Shop on Church Street. So we were the one retailer, I think, that was in the agenda, but didn't get listed, possibly based on a fire safety thing. But I'm kind of confused about that because we actually have the approval from the fire department, and we didn't get any word from you guys, so it was a shock or a surprise. Was there further details essentially?
Well, why don't we get through public comment, and when we close public comment, I'll ask about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we have an existing business that's running and everything's compliant. So that's why it was just kind of confusing. But I will look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Hey guys, nice to see you again. Like you say, in Plantillas. I'm Red Clover Analytics owner. I was gonna open a lab in Vermont until I encountered a predatory landlord, and that was pretty bad. Anyways, with that said, I was gonna comment with your ISO certification. To be completely honest, I was very surprised that you guys didn't ask for it right from the beginning. Because it's a thing that it's mostly needed in most states. It's one of the things that you have to be a laboratory in most states. But with that said, it does not. The certification does not supersede lab shopping. The certification, the only thing it does is it goes through your processes, through your methods, okay, and signs off on how you do it and whether you can replicate the results consistently. Okay, so it does not supersede lab shopping. The lab shopping comes into play if the lab itself starts to play with the results that are coming out. Okay, and that's where it comes out, and you start seeing people, favoring one lab over the other because of the favorable results that come out. It also is not very exhausting for the lab to do it. Like I said, I was gonna. Actually, I already have a $2,500 deposit with Perry Johnson to be able to come in and do it for me, and it was gonna take them a total of 3 weeks to do the back and forth. Not only that, it was gonna be another about $1,500 for traveling fees, but only if you had to go like in the boondocks of places. So it's not very expensive, and it doesn't. It's not very exhausting for the lab either. It's about 6 months of building your methods and making sure that, like I said, they are replicatable. Well, I can't say that word. Sorry, English second language. And when it comes to it, I think it's a better venue for you guys, because again, you guys lack the knowledge to actually look at the sheets and say whether they are honest results. I'm going to say. But nonetheless, if you do a little more research, if you guys like to, I can send you everything that I have on it. And there's several organizations that do it. And the main one that you are looking for is the 17025, the ISO 17025. But thank you for listening, nonetheless.
No, yeah, Reem, thank you. I know you've been very kind of helpful in guiding us, especially early on. Sorry to hear about your situation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for everything you've been doing and all the work that I know you'll be continuing to do for the industry. I know a lot of it goes unthanked, but many of us do really see all the work you put in, and we couldn't be here without you guys, having made this such an attainable market for all of us to get into, unlike so many other states where you have to be a millionaire and spend $25,000 plus on licenses. But with that said, I just wanted to address the canopy of what's been issued so far. We have about 363,500 square feet of indoor, and crunching some numbers with assumptions of 16 square feet per light or canopy or planting unit, and 2/3 of the canopy being used for bloom versus a third veg, and using the conservative number of 1 pound per light, which is very low, and that 42% for how much is being utilized so far for the indoor. There's a little less for mix, but that brings us to 31,488 pounds per year that we can produce for indoor cultivators and mixed. That's at 5 crops per year as well. So, I mean, that's looking like a lot of weight for such a small state, where in the past I've seen a number as low as 38,000 pounds per year being the total demand in 2025 or so. And that doesn't even take into account the 71,419 plants. Like I like to ignore the canopy for the outdoor, because most outdoor growers would probably look more at the plant count, not the canopy. So that's 71,419 plants have been issued the ability to grow, and at 75% utilization, that's 53,564 plants, and let's even call it half a pound per plant. That's 26,000 pounds. So we're looking at like over 50,000 pounds of production we're at already. And my concern is that all of us want to continue to grow and just like kind of grow as a business. So we can't just assume that we're all just going to stay at our low utilization. We've upgraded our tier, and no one really wants to have a tier 2 license and stay at 1,005 square feet of canopy. We're all going to hopefully try to grow. So I'm just saying, I think that, long story short, it'd be great to consider closing the tier 4 indoor window so that maybe more of us small growers can have a chance to get into the industry versus the not attainable tier 4 multi-million-dollar operations that really, it's not for the average Vermonter. But yeah, also, yes, everything you guys have been doing is great, and not trying to criticize what you're doing. Just wanted to throw in a little numbers that have been concerning to me and a lot of other growers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to comment. My name is Stephanie Waterman. I am the owner of White River Grow Pro. I just wanted to comment today on like an administrative glitch. We had 2 emails from Nellie in July 13th and July 27th that were her informational emails that noted a compliance check deadline of 8/21 for today's board meeting. Both of those emails noted 8/21. And it wasn't until the August 3rd email from Nellie that it mentioned the move up of the August 9th deadline. And I realized maybe that was moved up in meeting or something, but I wanted to just sort of put it out to your universe that moving the deadline up 2 weeks can cause a lot of stress and strain on small businesses that are trying to meet your targets. I was thankful to meet mine and got approved today for my tier 1 indoor, and I thank you all for that. But it took some flexing, and I know cultivators who didn't meet that and weren't able to flex. And so it set them back again. And I just want you guys to be aware of that situation in the breakdown of communication. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Megan Calla from Stillmore Farms, tier 1 mixed cultivator. I was doing my inventory tracking last week and I just ran into a problem with the website and reached out to Nellie, and I apologize to Nellie for clogging her inbox, but I don't know who to talk to about correcting my inventory submissions.
Barry?
Or contact your compliance agent.
I think if you do, what is it, ccv.compliance at vermont.gov.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
You just re-forward that. I mean, I think Nellie, just having heard this, can probably just forward it to the appropriate person. But
Sure. Fair.
So our compliance team will reach out. Thanks for mentioning it, though.
No problem. And is there a place that I can actually check on exactly who my compliance officer is? I had it in a notebook that was damaged.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, it depends on your location. We've divided the state up and kind of assigned our compliance team to various regions. So whoever reaches back out to you about this issue, I'll have them include that information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi there. Thank you. My name is Gianna Galucci. I'm the operations manager here at True 802 Cannabis in Burlington. And I just wanted to say we are in pretty hefty need of an inventory tracking training for retailers. I know there was that really helpful one for cultivators a while back, but really looking for that training for retailers specifically. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gianna.
Hey, shit. I didn't mean to put the camera on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, cool. I wanted to make a couple notes. I talked to a medical patient the other day who has told me that the medical dispensaries have stopped delivering to him and he can no longer get his meds anywhere. I've been trying to confirm that with some other medical patients and haven't been able to get anyone else on the books. But it sounds like he's in a lot of pain. He's got a traumatic brain injury. He's a really nice kid, and he's no longer able to get his meds now. And if that's true, I think that's kind of a big problem. I also just want to echo some of the stuff that Jesse Lynn Dolan said about the Department of Health, man. I don't know what they're doing with these bags, but you know, I thought that presentation, I really thought the Department of Health has wasted a lot of their time and money with their education, which isn't really being run by people that have the education to teach us about it, in my opinion. I think that's more of a waste of money. And I really, you know, I watched a lot of Mark Levine's presentations in the build up to this, and I really just, I think they're wasting our money with that. And I think a lot of people would agree with me, and including Jesse Lynn. So that's all I got to say to you guys today. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So I just want to say that I agree with Nick about closing the window on tier 4s. I think that would be a good move for everybody. And also, I don't think that medical patients should have to pay the cannabis tax at adult use dispos. That's it. Thank you. Hope everybody's having a great day.
Thanks, Tito.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. This is Carly from Northern Craft Cannabis Wholesale Company based out of Hyde Park. I wanted to kind of echo, I think it was Callie from True 802, questions about the tracking system, both acquisition and transfers. I've had some issues, a few issues that I'd really love some guidance on. Trying to submit an acquisition form, the product registration number being transferred can't be found in the Salesforce database, but it is listed on the registered cannabis product spreadsheet. And that's happened for a couple different products. So I'm not really sure how to get past that stage. And then also a little unclear on what options we should select for product type for things like tinctures and oils, as those product type options are a little different from the options under product registration. And just a little, having some hiccups trying to actually submit a form. There are a few things that just aren't functioning on my end. So if there's any clarification or guidance there, I would love to hear that.
Thanks for the info, Carly. I think anything related to products or inventory tracking, I should say, we are in the process of developing guidance videos for all of it. And we're actively submitting all of these kind of bug requests to our developer to fix. And I think that there has been just some delays in getting those fixed, but they are kind of in their queue to fix kind of systematically.
That is accurate. I would say that we need to not put the cart before the horse and develop the guidance until we've got these issues fixed. So I'd say that is sort of what the holdup is with the guidance on inventory tracking, is that we need to fix all of the continuing bugs that we have. But we do have a comprehensive list and we are working on it.
And anyone that is having issues with it should email those issues to ccb.compliance@vermont.gov so we can kind of get them in the queue for our developers.
Thanks for bearing with us.
But thank you for the comment. Keep at it.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking with my microphone muted. Apologies, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, board. I just want to take a moment during public comment to highlight a point of data that was raised during the executive director's report. The attrition rate of social equity and economic empowerment licensees comes as no surprise. And I just, this comment is not directed to the agency, but I do want to highlight the fact that we are one of the very few states with a regulated marketplace without funding in perpetuity for these individuals impacted by the criminalization of cannabis, period. And we're also including social economically depressed individuals. These are individuals that need to be lifted up on an ongoing basis beyond simply license fees. To that point, there are 2 legislative reports, as we're aware of, in Act 65, 2023. One of them is on your plate. I'm just wondering if this board can speak to the one that's on RDAP's plate and that racial justice legislative report. Thank you very much.
Jeffrey.
Hi, my name is Myra. I'm with Hidden Leaf Homestead, and I was on the agenda today for approval to have my license renewed. My current license actually expired yesterday, and the emails that I've received from the CCB regarding my renewal all have incorrect dates, like saying my renewal is due 30 days from now, but actually I've gotten everything in to have the renewal completed. I also haven't received the link or information on how to pay my licensing fees, so I was just looking at how I need to go about doing that, just so I can get a current copy of my license, just in case there are any issues, since it did expire yesterday. I did reach out to Chipper, my compliance officer, and he said he would check on it for me, but just wanted to put it out there in case anybody else has been having the same issue.
Thanks for raising that, Myra. Our whole licensing team is listening right now, and so I'm sure someone will be in touch about it.
After the board meeting.
Sounds like you're doing everything right, though, so don't worry. Anyone else that joined via the link, Millie? So if you joined via phone and would like to make a public comment, you can unmute your phone by hitting *6.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks. My name is Andrew Roy from the farm at Bolton Dome. I actually, rather than, publicly airing this out, was just hoping somebody could give me a quick call and a couple of inquiries to address. So I just hoping for a call to speak to somebody.
I left. Thank you.
I don't know what it's.
Hey, this is Nate Richardson from Pressure Lab. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just I wanted to kind of echo what Nick said about limiting the tier 4, 5, and 6 licenses. I just, I agree with Nick. I lived in, I've said this before in a meeting, but I've lived in Colorado and I lived in Southern Humboldt, and witnessed firsthand, the collapse of those markets. I lived in Humboldt right when the 215 Green Rush first began, and everything was great, and then slowly watched it just fall apart over the next several years, just from so many large licenses being issued just daily. We're a tier 2 mix cultivator, and we're at full scale outdoor, but indoor it's going to take us probably a year to get up to our full license production size. So I don't think that we're alone. I know a lot of other cultivators that are tier 1, tier 2, that are just kind of slowly building their businesses up. And from what I've seen in the dispensaries, there's no lack of product. Like there's plenty of stuff on the shelves. So I just wanted to say that I agree with Nick on that aspect with the tier 4, 5, and 6. And then something kind of unrelated. I'm not really, I don't want to say the names of the companies, but I'm not sure how it's happening. But I've received a couple emails over the past month or two for stuff like product registration for other cannabis companies. And it's I don't know, it's happened several times, like 4 or 5 times, where I get an email and it'll say, "Hey, so and so, not me. We just wanted to let you know about this product or that product. You need to do this or that." So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Just that I think that there is some mix-up with email addresses and stuff like that. But other than that, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be in this industry, and I really feel like the Vermont Cannabis Control Board is doing things better than just about every other state that I've lived in or seen. I really feel like you guys are looking out for the small growers, the craft cultivators, the legacy growers like myself. And so, yeah, thank you guys for all your hard work, and I'm just happy to be a part of this. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Nate. And thanks for flagging that. We are aware of that issue, and I think that we're actively correcting it. So, but thanks for raising it.
And thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, and thanks for jumping into this with us. Any other public comments? Okay, I'll close the public comment window. We are actively monitoring the tier 4 and whether we need to continue to keep that open. We're still less than a year into retail sales, and I think we still need to kind of see a little bit how the supply and demand have matched each other. But it is something that we take very seriously and keep a very close eye on. And I think we will certainly, it'll be topic of conversation for the board in the coming months. With respect to Robert Ronci, what I'm hearing from our licensing team is that there was an issue with your certificate of occupancy from fire safety. And I think we will reach out to you about it. And if it was a mistake on our end, if there is no issue, we can try and correct it before the next board meeting. But it sounds to me like it actually wasn't fully complete. The application was not fully complete. Any other issues we want to talk about while we're still in the meeting? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for staying with us to the end. And thank you for all the comments.
Till next time.